I'm John Borras. I'm an independent consultant now, retired from the UK government 5-6 years ago. I worked all my life in the UK government and was the Director of Technology on their first e-government application back in 2000. And we were one of the first governments to get into the e-government sphere. And that's relevant to what I'm going to talk about in a minute, about what we're doing now. So yes, I'm doing an independent consultant working on e-gov related matters, working on several projects for the European Commission. And I do a lot of work now on a sort of voluntary basis for the OASIS consortium on standards. I chair 3 OASIS committees at the moment. One is what we call the e-government member section, where it's a forum to bring together all the members of OASIS who have an interest in e-government type applications and services. And it's a place where we can discuss issues and look for solutions, provide advice. It's not a body that actually sets specifications and standards, but it might identify the need for them. But the more important one that's very active now is chairing a technical committee producing a specification for what we're calling transformational government. A lot of people refer to it as eGov 2. It's the next generation of e-government, but we prefer to call it transformational government because it's very different from what eGov was originally. And it's very much about transforming the whole way that governments interact with citizens and businesses and other governments and their communities. And instead of them being the drivers, they respond to the needs of the users. So in other words, it tries to break down the silos of government to provide citizens and businesses and universities and researchers and all of those types of communities with a single interface, a single one-stop service for government. It's quite a radical change, but it's been proved to work in a number of governments around the world so far, and significantly overcomes a lot of the pitfalls that eGov 1 ran into. There's clearly a lot of experience and knowledge that's been gained over the past few years, as we've been hearing at the conference today. And a lot of that knowledge is very relevant to the wider public sector. Generally, the skills level and the knowledge level within the public sector organisations around cloud computing is pretty low at the moment. It's still obviously an emerging market. So what the research community has learned over the last 5-10 years on grid and now cloud is very relevant, and if there's a way of trying to reuse that knowledge and experience, that would be a terrific benefit to the public sector. Questionable about how much benefit can be made of the tangible assets in terms of the software and the applications and the infrastructures. There's possibilities there, but one of the things that is clearly a possible impediment is the procurement legislation under which public sector communities have to operate. Now, there are ways and there are means of getting around that, and there are moves within the Commission and within some governments to try and simplify that, to open the doors up. But there are still all those barriers and legal hurdles that need to be broken down before I can see the public sector really taking big advantage of the tangible assets, so to speak. Well, I'm a standards man, have been all my life, so this is bread and butter to me, and standards in cloud is just as important as standards in any other aspect of ICT in the public sector space. Everyone recognises that with cloud you need to be interoperable and allow data portability and all of those good objectives, and you're only going to achieve that by having standards in place and everybody using those standards and using them in the same way. And that's an important thing to remember, that people often say, well, we'll adopt the same standards, but that doesn't guarantee interoperability and portability. You need to use them in the same way, and there are many experiences of different vendors, different organisations implementing standards in different ways and then saying, well, we can't interoperate because your profile is different to my profile. So you need to have standards, but you need to have profiles, accreditation, user testing, all of that to back it up to make sure you're all doing the same thing in the same way. In respect of Project Sienna, it's been a very interesting experience. It's been an evolving project, as we've heard from the conference this morning, where we started perhaps 12 months or so ago, and the objectives and the remit we had then has evolved and changed, and that's caused a whole new rethink on what the end roadmap that we've now produced should look like and what it should contain. But I think from all the discussions we've had and from the very large response to the public consultation that we've just ploughed our way through, we now have a very, I think, robust report with a very pragmatic set of recommendations and call for action. And I just hope that between the politicians and the vendor community and the research community, the way is found to take those recommendations forward and they don't just become shelfware.